We're online.
So here we are. Welcome to No More Mundane Mondays. And the topic tonight is women in leadership. Why they are hated, why they are disdained, and why we do not support them overall. So we have a guest, and our guest is Pastor Sherman. He's on here because he's one of the few men who actually support women in leadership. And a lot of times he's ridiculed in his circles for doing that as well. I think it's an exciting topic because quite honestly, I'm a woman leader in the church. I'm a woman leader in the secular world, and I get a whole lot of flack about it because I know what I want. I'm not afraid to say what I want, and it raises so many questions. And so I love the topic. Recently, I watched Preachers of Detroit. He liked Preachers of LA. I wasn't into that. But when I saw women on Preachers of Detroit, I said, this is going to be good. It is time to shatter the limits of women being in these roles. Until I watched the first episode. And I said, what in the... Yeah, that's what I said. And so when I saw them talking about the topic and the twisted way they were approaching it, I was like, are you kidding me? And so my favorite statement from that one was, men are just better leaders, period. What? And so for me, this became more of, because I know some people try to make it like a scriptural debate. Not going to do that here tonight, okay? But to me, there is this attitude and this idea that men can just do it better. Now, let's make it very clear. I am not saying that men are poor leaders. I'm not saying that men should not be leaders. But what I am saying is that women can lead and they have the ability to lead. They have great qualities that they bring to the table as leaders, as well as men have great qualities that they bring to the table as leaders. And I feel like as a nation, we are robbing the up and coming generations of what women really do have to offer. I thought it was interesting when President Obama was elected that even people who have this disdain for African Americans said, well, we'll let a nigger lead, but it will never be a woman. And so for me, I was like, wow, this is really how we feel about this. This is such an intense moment that we would cut out half of an entire population from leading a country, from leading a business, from leading a corporation, from leading a church. And so tonight, what say ye?
Well, so, forgive us for using the N-word, but that literally was what the person said. So it was a direct quote concerning that. But the truth is that I don't know if women leaders are all hated. I don't know if they're all disdained, but for sure, some definitely are. And there are people that have that total position. I am one, as a pastor, as a businessman, that believes that women are able to walk in leadership right alongside men. I did watch that episode of the Preachers of Detroit, and to see one of the most famous gospel stars, she's on there saying it, so we can talk about it here, talking about the fact that she felt like men are just better leaders. I was even shocked by that because I've known throughout the history of my life that that's absolutely not the truth in all areas. I mean, to just say, period, men are better leaders is incorrect. And so I think this is great that we're starting this dialogue today and we're having this conversation because many people need to hear about the fact of, or begin to think about the fact that there are great qualities both in men and in women leadership. But we have to begin to really process this. One of the things that I think is something that you always mention is that a lot of times the biggest struggle comes from women in the way that they view women in leadership. And so it's almost like a kind of a self-hate almost thing going on, where there are women who feel like men are better leaders just across the board, just like this woman from Preachers of Detroit. And so I think it's important for us to evaluate this. And I think we have some questions here today that have come in online that we want to help tackle and continue that conversation.
What do you think is the most significant barrier to female leadership?
I think the most significant barrier to female leadership are people who are not open-minded. And so for me, I think that some people are really stuck to the way that things have previously been. And so I think that once we are just open to new things and new experiences, then I honestly think that we will be able to embrace new styles of leadership. Another one of the questions that we received was someone asked, why is it that women who are assertive and have these different qualities, those same qualities exhibited in a woman are not desirable. However, those qualities exhibited in a man make a good leader. And I think that traditionally we just have really put a limit on what women can accomplish. And so when it seems like they're coming against this ideal woman that we have seen before, then it's something that is not desirable. Like, wait a minute, you know, you're supposed to be mild and, you know, soft-spoken and don't bitch and things like that. I never forget my principal, when I started working in a charter, she used to tell me, Mia, don't tell them your opinion. The men don't like that. And, you know, she was serious and she really was trying to help me out as a mentor and let me know that when we were in public spaces, not to give an opinion that was contrary to that of my bosses. However, when opinion that's contrary to their bosses, it's sometimes looked at as innovative, or it's something that, wow, you're thinking a different way. Right. And so it's very interesting. And I think it's just because it challenges what we're used to seeing from women.
Yeah. Yeah. And just to add on to that, I think, you know, it's this whole idea of that, you know, women are subjective to men, and so we rule, we reign, and it's the way that we want it to be, and so we want you to be simply quiet and to allow for us to make our sound be heard, which I just want to encourage, you know, any women or men that may be watching this to work towards shattering and destroying that limit that life has placed on women around you. And I think we need more men who will encourage the creativity, the innovative thinking in women. And for me, living with, ministering with, partnering with an amazingly strong woman, I love the fact that she is opinionated. I love the fact that she's a strong leader, because it benefits me. We're able to grow things better together. We're able to affect lives in a stronger way because of her strength and my strength together. So I'm not looking for my wife to be a silent woman sitting on the front row waving her hand saying, preach, baby, which is fine if that's your thing, but it's not ours. And so our dynamic is, it's really about us pulling on the strengths of one another. So I think as we go forward in this, if we can have more men begin to get that kind of mentality, I think it's going to help also.
What are some of the struggles that you have had being a woman in ministry, and how have you overcome them?
Some of the struggles I've had being a woman in ministry, and how have I overcome them? I wouldn't say that I've overcome them. I say that I struggled to overcome them. One of the biggest challenges that I've had being a woman in ministry is honestly being constantly questioned, constantly I think just like on the table for things. And so it is a constant struggle for me just in leading even a local church, and even I would say dealing with other women in the church, challenging my leadership style, my way of doing things. And so for me, it is something that I have to stay grounded in and really realize that sometimes when you're a pioneer in something, right, you kind of just have to roll with the punches, because you are not just walking it out yourself, but other people are watching this and they have to overcome what they're now facing. And so I think not making it such a personal thing, but I would definitely say that it is not complete. Pastor Sherman in a leadership meeting can say all kinds of things, and it would be, that's right, you tell him, Pastor. And if I were to come behind him and say the same things, it'd be like, wow, what is she on today? You know, and so it's very interesting just to deal with the way that people entreat you. I think outside of our local church, being a woman in ministry, it's this same thing where people feel like, for whatever reason, being a woman in ministry means that you somehow have compromised your home duties as well. And so for me, just really addressing that and letting them know that, you know, our house is in order. Amen. I still do rear children and all of those types of things. You know, I'll, you know, bring a couple into the world. I do 2 babies at one time, actually. And so I do that kind of stuff as well. And so I think that there's this idea that a woman as a leader somehow is not handling her womanly, you know, what we say womanly duties are as well. In our household, because I am a great contributor to my household as well. We do share those duties, but I do have domestic responsibilities as well.
Domestic. And I think something really good to talk about with this is, it's amazing. You used the word pioneer, and it's amazing to me in 2015 that it's still this a concept, a new concept to people to hear the topic of co-pastoring or women pastoring by themselves. Like, people are, I'm amazed. I feel like oftentimes we're stuck back in a time warp, because in the day where even corporations are putting women in different parts of leadership and their top level executives and things of that nature, it's shocking to me that that still in churches, they're like, huh? No, oh, she the first lady, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with first ladies. But in our case, again, we're co-pastoring, and it just amazes me. So I think that we need to really, really enlighten ourselves to study the scriptures for ourselves. And I think that's an important statement to make, because as we're talking about women in ministry, some of our views that we have around the world are simply based upon our opinion or indoctrination. So if we want to be able to follow God and his view, we have to look at what he has to say about it. And that's only found in the word. And I must agree, not only does she handle her domestic duties, she handles her domestic duties well.
Amen. What's another question?
Okay, why is it that women leaders who show characteristics of strength and are direct, serious, intentional, and not a size Barbie are often labeled or get the reputation for being a female dog in the workplace, when if a man has these same qualities, he is praised?
We kind
of
got that one.
Yeah.
Okay, why does it seem like, okay, why do you think, what do you think is the most significant? How do you lead women who don't believe women should lead?
How do you lead women who do not believe that women should lead?
That is a good one.
You lead well. And so I think that there is a way to lead where you become bitter and you have this attitude of, well, I'm going to show her I can do it. And you approach it from a negative standpoint, and inevitably you're received in a negative way. And so I think that to embrace that woman and be a good leader to that person in whatever the context is. So if it's in the church setting, then do all of the responsibilities. If it's in the business setting, then you do those responsibilities. And I think that through your leadership, you model and exemplify what a positive leader is, period. And I think that sometimes when people have decided that something should not happen, sometimes they stick with that ideal. And it doesn't matter how good of a job you do, because their bottom line is, well, she's an exception to the rule. You will, but that you have to be intentional about not living up to the stereotype. So the same way somebody said earlier, you know, you can sometimes be labeled as the female dog. And so you can either live up to that stereotype or you can shatter the stereotype by being something else and being exactly the leader that God's called you to be.
Yeah.
How do you balance being a strong leader, woman, and role model without seeming like you're being overbearing, and like the balance between submission and not emasculating men? Like,
okay, so how do you be a strong leader?
How do you balance being a strong leader
but not being overbearing?
Mm-hmm.
I would say that I don't think that there's a balance. I think that's a problem that women made up, that they want to be strong leaders, but they don't want to be overbearing. I guarantee you, ladies, that's not something that comes across men's mind, that they don't want to be overbearing as a leader. And so I think that's something that we've created as women. I think that your goal should be that you lead. And so if you're going to be leading people, you cannot be concerned about over leading them. I think that being overbearing is kind of like this idea of somehow overstepping your bounds. But if you're called to lead a thing, you need to be assertive, you need to be clear, and you need to give them something worth following. Part of that question also had to do with like submission or?
Correct. She said, where is the line between emasculation and exuding femininity?
Where's the line between emasculation and exuding femininity? I think that femininity is a crock. I think that it is this thing that like we've made up, because when we think femininity, we think pearls and lace and pink and soft colors and tea parties and hats and flowers. But to me, femininity is strong. Femininity is realizing that I was put on this earth to reproduce. That's why I'm here. That's the main thing that makes me a woman. I am a man with a womb. And so not only do I lead, but I lead, I reproduce, I nurture a thing, and then bring it into fruition. So that is femininity to me. When we talk about emasculation, I think it's inappropriate, period. Men do it, and I think that women do it. And I think that when we emasculate people, I think that it's because we don't honor who they are. But because I honor what men bring to the table, because I honor what my man brings to the table, then I don't fall into emasculation because I honor what they have to offer.
I think that's really good. I mean, it's just leading well, period. And that's the conversation needs to be had, is how, as Pastor Jay said, how can we all become better leaders? She's right. I'm not thinking about the fact of, am I overbearing? 10 times out of 10, I care less if I'm overbearing. And so the situation is that we all want to be careful. And I understand what people are saying as it relates to even in your leadership. We all want to be careful to make sure that we're caring for those that we lead with. But that doesn't mean that you can't lead strong and care.
Right, because bottom line, it's about being effective.
Right.
And so, like, how can we be effective? How can we care for people? And, you know, it's kind of different, ministry versus versus secular, that's obviously, because you have some roles laid out for you. And then in ministry, there's also that aspect of love, which I think men and women both have, you know, levels of increasing ourselves in.
Yeah. And that's the key. You just mentioned it. As long as we as believers, whether it be in the marketplace or whether it be in the church, as leaders, if we're walking in love, that's the key point, because everything in the faith, everything that's connected to the kingdom of God, we should walk in love, and that's how it counts. That's how it matters. Any other questions?
Any moments early in your career that surprised you in terms of how you were treated by men in the workplace?
Any moments early in my career that surprised me on how I was treated in the workplace. Was I surprised? No, I don't think I was surprised. I think that just like the comments and different things like that did not come as a surprise to me. I think that when it surprises me is when it comes from people who are close to me and I esteem highly. And so in the workplace in general, you know, I try to honor all people and value them for the role that they play. But quite honestly, sometimes I'm just like, well, you know, that's about typical to what they think or how they operate. And so I'm not really moved by it. But when people in my family make comments about women in leadership, that's hurtful. When people who I think of very highly as being advanced and open-minded and forward-thinking make those comments, then that tends to be a little offensive. And so I think that it makes a difference just on who it is and what they say. But bottom line, I feel that you cannot take things personal as a vendetta against you as an individual, because you're challenging some people's whole ideal, the whole thing that they grew up with their entire life. And even I feel like sometimes for women, because when the polls are taken, then even women prefer male leaders over women leaders. And so imagine you've been a woman your entire life. You've always wanted to do something, and you finally see a woman that's doing it. Now, I'm not going to say you're jelly, but I am going to say that it brings something to the forefront of your mind, and you realize the thing that I thought was impossible, somebody's doing it.
Wow.
And so it makes you reflect on your own decisions. It makes you reflect on your own limits. And that's a conundrum for some people.
Wow. Wow. I think it's like you mentioned earlier, pioneering again. And I want to talk about that because it's be willing to be the first. It doesn't matter if, you know, there's things that still they're created in the world that women have not done yet. Maybe a man has always done this, but be willing to be the first. But when you're the first, there is things that you have to deal with, endure, press through, that people that come behind you will not have to do because you say yes to being the first. And I just want to encourage all women in all leadership out there to just be committed to take those steps, no matter what those limits are or what men try to box you in. Be willing to be the first, be willing to take that step and to do what, you know, you feel like the Lord's telling you to do.
What will be the biggest challenge for women behind you?
I think the biggest challenge for the generation of women coming behind me is to take it to the next level. Because you see now more than ever, women who are holding careers, more women holding leadership positions, women making an impact in different arenas. And so I feel that each generation has the task of pushing the envelope just a little bit further. And so it's almost like our challenge when Jesus left, and he's like, greater works shall you do in my name. Yeah. And so all of the amazing women that exist now, they have the challenge of, you know, superseding what it is that they have been able to accomplish. I'm not the first woman principal. I'm not the first woman earning a PhD. I'm not the first woman to pastor a church, but somebody was. Yeah. And so I may feel that I have this struggle, but I'm not the first one. Other people have done it. And so there are a generation of women that are watching us. They are watching to see just how far they can go. And so we have a responsibility as this generation to push the limit and then leave them with a legacy that says, I think I can do just a little bit more than that.
As mothers or future mothers, can you give us some tips on how to raise women who are constantly looking at television and seeing the way that women are portrayed as leaders in the media? For example, you did comment on the way that the media portrayed and has highlighted Michelle Obama for her fashion and for those types of things, and not really focusing so much on the philanthropic things she has done. So could you give us some tips about how to do that?
I think, first of all, culture is built at your home. And so you have to take those moments of what you've seen on television or you're hearing on the radio, seen in magazines, and use them as teaching moments for your niece or whoever this child is, to let them know what this is, what the culture is saying, but then you're called to step out of that or to push the limits that are set there in culture. So it begins at home. And oftentimes we're looking for other people to do it, but obviously this person wants those steps. And so the first thing is begin at home by having those conversations with your daughter. My daughter is 3 years old, and right now she shows extremely strong leadership. But I expect nothing different from her being raised up in a home with Jaquette and myself, but still in her leadership, even now, I take moments to teach my daughter and to talk to her about her processes to make sure she's viewing things right. So you're going to have to begin with those conversations and pointing out what is the right way, what isn't.
Absolutely. And I think that we need to be intentional about it. I think that a lot of times we only allow girls to think so far. And so we buy them dolls, we buy them baby carriages, and then we wonder why they're 16 and pregnant. But they've been babies since they were babies. And so that's all we show them that they can do. And so our little girl, she can play with whatever she wants. She can play with an airplane if she'd like. If she would like to be a pilot or dress up in a superhero costume, that's okay. And so I think that we need to open their horizons and let them know there are girls who are good at math. You don't just have to be like a writer or do pretty things. And so allowing their experience experiences to be heightened. We know a little girl who really likes Spider-Man, and her mom threw her a Spider-Man party, and people were just like, you know, had all kind of crass comments to make, but I'm like, really? Are we gonna limit a little girl's birthday party to pink, purple, and fairies? And so I think that just raising them with an open mind, taking them to conventions, taking them to hear women speakers, taking them to see women professors and all kinds of things, just broaden their horizons and take responsibility for you to do it, because it's not just going to happen organically. Because it's not that widespread. And so we have to do it on purpose and open their horizons. And if they decide that they want to go traditionally for women, that's okay. Opportunity to dream that they could be and do anything.
And I think the key is affirmation is a big part of that conversation. And it's part of why I'm so excited that my wife allowed me to be on tonight, because I feel like who will affirm women and push them into that. So my daughter, any of my children, but my daughter too, they're not allowed to say I can't. I can't, it's not a part of our language here. So we're going to talk about how we can, and we're going to talk about how you can accomplish that. And so making sure that we're affirming in those things as we show them, saying, hey, the possibilities are missed. There's amazing opportunities for you to thrive and go forward.
Okay. What women leaders inspire you?
What women leaders inspire me? Well, honestly, in planning Shatter, I looked at a lot of women. Shatter is a women's conference, but it is a Christian women's conference. And so for me, I was looking for women who were working in the secular arena, but then also working in ministry. What I came up short. And so I was very disappointed with the number of options that I had, even in Southern California. I've helped my husband plan conferences year after year, and we've had a list of men that we would, the brand and what we were promoting. Right now, I love Christine Kane. I think that she is amazing. I think that she's doing things in the secular arena, but then also in ministry, and she is a powerful example in leadership. And that's not to say that there are no other women in leadership, but to me, she embodies like a Renaissance type woman. To me, she's Proverbs 31. Wow. And so when people talk about Proverbs 31, they talk about all the nice things, and they really like to talk about the parts that have to do with your husband. But they don't talk about the part where they're out there working. They are making strategic decisions. Right. They are making an impact. They know how to think. They know how to run their households, and they do it with class, and they do it well. And so that's what I'm loving right now.
Wow. Wow. Yeah.
Okay. So did you have a wrap up?
Yeah, I do. You know, I want you to do this, first of all. This conversation must be had around the world. And so if you're viewing this, whether you're viewing it live or you're viewing it on demand, it's going to be really important for you to click that share button, because there's some woman, there's some man that needs to hear this conversation. And so I want you to share it with as many people. I'm telling you, go through your Facebook friends on Twitter and just send it to people and inbox them, because we want to spark something. We know this is not the end all here at our table here to have this conversation, but so many people need to have it, and continue to have this in your home. Continue to speak about this and encourage people to, specifically women, to step out. There's nothing that a woman cannot accomplish in this world, and that just needs to be said, period. There are no limits that God is placing on you. And it doesn't matter that you have household responsibilities, because men have them too.
So thank you for joining us for No More Mundane Mondays. And if you are catching this on playback, then thank you so much for taking the time to even go back and gather this news feed. If you are available, or if you're not available, make yourself available for Shatter 2015, which will be held April 24th and April 25th in San Bernardino. You can on JaquetteDunas.com, and we will see you again.
Bye-bye.